Hi friends, and welcome to another video. Today I am bringing you my all-time most favorite thrillers. This is kind of a recommendation video because obviously I recommend every favorite thriller of mine to you, but it's also just a chance for me to talk about some of the books that I love. Also, I would like to start doing more genre specific favorites because at the end of the year, at the end of every year, we do a best and worst and a surprising and disappointing. And sometimes books just don't fit into those parameters, and sometimes I just want to talk about books that I've loved, and I think this is a great way to do that. So, of course, one of my most read genres is thriller, psychological thriller, mystery thriller, anything just thriller related or thriller adjacent, I love. So I thought I would kick off this talking about my favourites in specific genres series with my favourite genre, or one of my favourite genres. So I have a few books here today, and my hopes are you will find something that you end up loving just as much as I have. Something I noticed while I was making this list is that I don't actually own a lot of my favourite thrillers, and I think in 2025 I want to remedy that. I will have a 2025 reading goals or plans video coming out in the future, but one of my goals is to read off my shelves and also replace books on my shelves with things that I've read and loved. Because sometimes I read books on Kindle or I get them from the library and I don't necessarily buy them unless, they're a favourite. But I noticed making this list that even my favourites don't seem to be on my shelves, and that needs to be remedied real quick. So in 2025, I would like to start buying some of the books that I have gave 5 stars that I do class as favourites and putting them on my shelves, because my whole goal is to make my shelves reflect me as a reader. And at the moment, they kind of do, they kind of don't. I have books on there that have been on there for years and still unread, but I still have interest in. I have books that I've read and loved, and I have stuff that I just don't see myself either rereading or enjoying again. But I have been more brutal in 2024. If I read something and it's below a 3.5 star, I've been unhauling it near enough immediately. So I'm going to continue that trend into 2025, and I'm also going to add in the trend of buying books that I have favorited that I don't own. But that was a total tangent, so we're going to get on with this list. The first book I have here is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, and I was hesitant to pick this one up because Karen Slaughter is really hyped, but this book has been really hyped in the thriller community, and I was just worried that I wouldn't like it. But also, it's a long book. It's over 500 pages, and sometimes thrillers over 500 pages can be a hit or a miss, and this one was definitely a hit for me. I do apologise. I have a sleeping pups at the bottom of my chair, so if you hear some cute little snores, then that's my doggy. A perfect soundtrack to this video, if I don't say so myself. So in this, you follow Claire, who 20 years ago, her younger sister Julia went missing. And there was no body, there was technically no crime, she just disappeared. The police kind of thought she would be a runaway, which of course they did. And then in present day, another girl goes missing, and Claire is left to reveal some shocking truths about what happened to her sister and what is happening to the girls now. This is a book that really drives home that you never know someone, you never know who you're sharing a bed with, you never know who you're in love with, you never know who your family is. Like, this book really drives home that statement of you never really know someone. And you get a bit of estranged family reuniting, and it's dark. This is a dark thriller, and I would look up content warnings because it goes there. But if you like a dark thriller and you like secrets coming out in the present from the past, I love, it's so specific, but I love when something happened a while ago, and then the truth gets revealed like 10, 20 years later, and you start following the breadcrumbs from the past to get the answers in the present. I love that in a book, and it was done so well in this book. The characters were well written, the plot was well written, and at the end, when everything was kicking off and it was the third act, tensions were high, actions were high, and it was really devastating. And I can't actually recommend this more. This is a staple thriller for me now. If I know someone is a thriller reader and likes the genre, I recommend this book. I don't really recommend it to people that aren't so much in the thriller genre. It's not a beginner thriller that I would recommend because of the dark themes, but it's definitely one I would recommend to seasoned thriller readers. But let's be honest, if you're a seasoned thriller reader, you've probably already read this. So this is book 1. The next book I have here is What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. I read this for the 2022 Goodreads Choice Awards. I failed, by the way, but I still had a good time with the thrillers that I did read. In this, you follow Naomi, and 20 years ago, her and her two best friends, Olivia and Cassidy, used to go out and play the Goddess game. And during this game, one of them ends up stabbed 17 times. And she survives these stab wounds, and all three of the girls put this man away who is convicted of being a serial killer. But now, in present day tense, there's doubts and there's questions, and these girls now have to relive a very traumatic experience that they went through together. This reminded me of a true crime case, which I think made it kind of predictable for me, because there is a true crime case surrounding the Slender Man, and there was these three girls that done things because Slender Man told them to, and it very reminiscent on that case. And because I remembered that true crime story, I feel like I kind of predicted where this story was going to go. But I think to mark this as a favourite thriller for me is because even though I predicted the ending of this book, it was still really well written. The characters were very unique. The setting was done really well. And even though predictable, the third act did still hold that shock and awe moment, even if it wasn't shocking as it would be if I didn't predict what I predicted. But I do recommend this if you're looking for something, again, a very similar theme here. The thrillers that I like tend to be things that happened in the past that are getting revealed in the present, and this is another one of those. It also has strong friendships at the center, and whether friendships are toxic or not is a question that runs through your head when you're reading this book, because, you know, teenagers in and of themselves aren't fully developed, so developing real and raw and honest relationships just is kind of not impossible, but very hard to do. And when you go through something like this, it serves as a trauma bond. And these three grown women are so different, but are bonded by this trauma that they all went through. And you get a lot of that through the narrative. And I just really enjoyed this, even though I found it predictable. And I would be very interested to see if someone that didn't know about the true crime case that I know about, if they found this predictable. So if you've read this, let me know in the comments if you did find it predictable. And if you did, let me know if there was a reason for that. Keep it spoiler free, please, though, because we don't want to spoil anyone. We want them to read these books. Well, I want you to read these books because I just want to chat about them all day long. The next book I have here was another one I read last year for the Goodreads Awards, and it is Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. And normally I would try and put the synopsis into my own words, but with this one I am going to read directly from the synopsis, simply because it has such a high impact when you read the synopsis over anything that I could come up with. So I am going to read directly for this one. So, January 1978, a serial killer has terrorized women across the Pacific Northwest, but his existence couldn't be further from the minds of the vibrant young women at the top sorority on Florida State University campus in Tallahassee. Tonight is a night of promise, excitement, and desire, but Pamela, president of the sorority, makes the unpopular decision to stay home, a decision that unwittingly saves her life. Started awake at 3 a.m. by strange noise, she makes the fateful decision to investigate. What she finds behind the door is a scene of implausible violence. 2 of her sisters dead, 2 others maimed. Over the next few days, Pamela is thrust into a terrifying mystery inspired by the crime that's captivated public interest for more than 4 decades. On the other side of the country, Tina Cannon has found peace in Seattle after years of hardship. A chance encounter brings 25-year-old Ruth into her life, a young woman with painful secrets of her own, and 2 form an instant connection. When Ruth goes missing from Lake State Park in broad daylight, surrounded by thousands of beachgoers on a beautiful summer day, Tina devotes herself to finding out what happens to her. When she hears about the tragedy in Tallahassee, she knows it's the man the papers refer to as the all-American sex killer. Determined to make him answer for what he did to Ruth, she travels to Florida on a collision course with Pamela in one impending tragedy. Now, this book had me crying at the end because it really is solely about the women and the victims, the survivors. It is about everyone that a serial killer's actions hurt. Instead of being about the serial killer, this was such a unique take on a thriller about a serial killer, because instead of focusing on the serial killer and his actions, it focused on the repercussions of his actions and the people that were hurt by them. And it's just so powerful and so moving. And the whole way through this, the killer does not get named, but all the women do, all the victims, all the survivors, all the people that have been hurt and have been affected by this man's actions get named. And it was just so strong. It was such a strong book. It had me in tears at the end. I highly recommend this one. This is thriller litfic for me. I don't know if that is correct, but for me personally, I would put it into the thriller litfic category, because it had an impact that, how do I say this? So, a lot of thrillers can fall into that line of being fun, fast-paced, entertaining. Sometimes they can fall into that genre of being, cheesy, and you don't take them too seriously. This is a different one for me. This is a thriller that packs a punch. That's it. This is a thriller that packs a punch, and if you need some punching in the gut, read this one, because it is worth your time. It is worth your time. The next book I have here is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, and this is one that I first listened to on audio and have since reread as physical, and it's still held up on physical. I do recommend the audio version. I'm pretty fussy with audiobooks, so when I find one that works, I get really excited, and this one really works as an audio, but it also holds up as a physical read as well, if that's what you prefer. In this, you follow Maggie Hall, and she grew up in this Victorian manor called Banbury Hall, and her dad ended up writing a horror story, a horror novel about the events that took place in Banbury Hall. But of course, you don't quite know if these are true or false. So Maggie returns to this manor, and she's trying to look for answers to figure out how much is fact and fiction in her dad's novel. So this is a story within a story, which I really enjoyed, because you get the parts of her dad's horror novel, and you kind of think to yourself, is this going where I think it's going? Is this real? Is this true? And then you have Maggie's perspective in present day, and she's kind of refuting the facts of the horror story, but there's some things that just can't be answered, and it's kind of like a horror story in a thriller story, and I loved that. I also like this kind of format where you have a story within a story, or someone telling a story within a story. And I think I have another one that's similar on this list. So in this one, you get a horror novel within a thriller novel. And it's one of my favourite Sager books. I think this and Lock Every Door. Lock Every Door could potentially be on this list, but I wanted to try and really hone in on what I class as favourites, and this one pipped the post for me over Lock Every Door. So yeah, I would recommend this one. A favourite that I absolutely need on my shelves is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. My issue is I'm trying to get the small hardbacks because all of my Tiffany D. Jacksons that I have are small hardbacks, and I want all of the author's work to match each other so they can stay on the same shelf. And it's kind of hard to get this book in the small hardcover format. I'm really struggling. I don't want to pay over the odds for it, but at this point, I actually might, because this is by far the one of the thrillers that have stuck with me the most. I love Tiffany D. Jackson's work, and I did make an exception on this list for this author because this is not the only book on this list from Tiffany D. Jackson. I can't even. I bawled at this. So in this, you follow Claudia, and she and Monday are inseparable. They're closer than sisters. But when Monday doesn't show up for school, she gets really worried and starts asking around. No one seems to know where she is. And then a week goes by, a second week goes by, and then, she starts getting really worried and thinking, where is my Monday? And then she starts asking people when they last saw her and what she was wearing, and no one seems to remember when they last saw Monday or where they last saw Monday. And so you follow Claudia trying to claw her way to the truth and find her best friend, find her sister essentially. And oh my god, is this bloody devastating. Oh my god, I want to reread this just so I can cry all over again. And when I get my physical edition, I will be rereading this because it is just soul destroying. Absolutely soul destroying. I was listening to this at work because I was reading it on my Kindle and I didn't want to stop reading. So I started listening to the audiobook at work, and I just floods of tears, bawling. I'm so glad that at the time I worked night shift, so there was no one around and my colleagues were nowhere around, and I just bawled like a big ass baby with this book. I loved it. It has, again, inspiration or tidbits took from a true story. So if you know about the true story, you may find this predictable. And I do think if you know about the true crime case that kind of resembles this one, which I did know, but I didn't put two and two together as I was reading. As I was reading, I was just along for the ride. And then when the big reveal happened, I automatically went, oh my god, this seems so familiar. So if you know the true crime case, then the impact may be slightly different. But if you go into this just for the ride, be prepared to have your heart broken. It's a rough one. It's a rough one. I might actually vlog my reread of this. If you would be interested in that, let me know in the comments. I may vlog my reread just to get that, next reaction on video, but let me know in the comments. Another book I desperately need is Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson, and this one's a rough one. It's a hard read because in this you follow Mary B. Addison, who is convicted of killing a baby, and her black church-going mum and her as a 9-year-old were watching over, babysitting this white baby, and when the baby ended up dead, everyone blamed Mary. And there was a trial, Mary got convicted, but no one actually knows if she'd done this or not because she's never said. So you follow Mary as she comes out of, I think it's a detention center, because she was obviously 9 years old when she was convicted, so she didn't get tried as an adult. So you follow her as she goes through life new, right? It kind of has, again, overtones of the Mary Bell situation. If you don't know about that, that was a young girl that killed a boy in her childhood area. And when the body was found, she went back and forth to the mum's house, and she was just very involved. She didn't really know what she had done, I don't think. And in this story, it really has overtones of that true crime case. And it was so poignant that Mary was only 9, I think, in this story. So she is a child herself. And you go through this whole story going, was she capable? Did she do it? I'm not really sure. I don't think so. Her actions now don't really relate to someone that would do that, but then again, she was only 9, so maybe she didn't know what she was doing, and it just gets to you. It really, really gets. This book got to me. Tiffany D. Jackson is masterful at taking, something that we've maybe heard before, something that's happened in real life, and making us feel or read from a different point of view, seeing it in a different light. And I just love Tiffany D. Jackson's work. Absolutely adore it. If anything, read these 2 books, because both of them, I would say Monday's Not Coming had me bawling because of the big reveals and stuff I didn't see coming. This one was more of a quiet cry, a little simmering cry. Still cried at both of them. Still highly recommended both of them. I need to get copies for my shelf to go with my Tiffany D. Jackson collection. And I also implore you to pick up her work, because damn, that woman knows how to tear your heart apart. Another book which is a little bit lighter, a little bit on the more fun side, I suppose. Well, it's still got dark themes, but it's not as it didn't make me cry, I suppose. So I do actually own this. I own the second book. I need to buy the third book, but my mum is borrowing the first book right now, so I don't actually have it in my hands at the minute. It is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torr. I picked this up on a total whim, didn't know if I would like it, and I ended up absolutely loving it. In this, you follow Deanna, and she is a sex worker online. She never leaves her house because she's scared that she will murder people. So everything, her whole life is in this apartment. She makes money by doing cams online. She gets everything delivered to her house. She is pretty much in a cocoon of, a prison, actually, of her own making, because she's scared that she has this want or need to kill people. So keeping herself away from public or any kind of people she feels is safer, until she is online and one of her clients has really weird requests and says really weird things, and she thinks a child may be in danger. And so Deanna finally leaves her house. And then with that, you get all the action packed of this woman who is scared that she's going to be a killer, leaving her house and potentially hunting down someone that may deserve to be killed. I don't know. So the whole trilogy is a good time. I do think the first book has that little bit of magic in it, where it was different. It was something I hadn't read before. It was also didn't take itself too seriously. And even though we follow Deanna, who is potential murderer, it was empowering to hear from a sex worker's perspective on how she gets through her daily life, and also kind of nice to hear from someone that doesn't leave their house. As someone that has pretty severe anxiety, if I don't have to leave my house, I won't leave my house. I like my house. I like my comforts. And outside makes me anxious. So as someone that mostly hibernates, unless I'm forced not to, then I loved seeing this woman just live her life in her apartment. And while I was reading this, part of me was like, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could stay in my house 24/7. Viably, if I could make money from the comfort of my own home, I would definitely choose that as an option. But then there's also part of me that is when you choose that as an option, you're your own boss. So if you don't make any money, the only person you got to blame is yourself. That was a total tangent, but I loved seeing Deanna just live her life in this one place. It's essentially like one room that doubles as her workspace and her living space. And she was a good character to follow. So if you're looking for something, it still has dark themes. It definitely has dark themes, but it's a little bit lighter because Deanna is quite funny and she brings like a lightness to the material. So I highly recommend this one if you're looking for a fun character and someone like in a setting that is interesting to read about. The next book I have here is The Night Swim by Megan Golden, and similar to Home Before Dark, this is a story within a story. So in this, you follow Rachel, and she has a true crime podcast, and it's completely taken off, and she is under pressure to make season 3 just as great as the last 2 seasons. So when she hears about this case in this small town where the golden boy, Olympic swimmer, like the guy everyone knows around town, is accused of R-ing the police chief's daughter, granddaughter. So she goes to this town to follow the trial. She is also covering it for her podcast. So with this, you get an in-person POV of Rachel finding out what's happening, trying to find out the truth about what's going on in this town, and if this accusation or trial, like the outcome of everything. But you also get the podcast that she is telling the world. And I love that. I'm a sucker for podcasts. I recently just read Listen for the Lie and loved that too. Like, that may potentially be on another favourites thriller list. I didn't put on this one because I want this one to be like ones that have sat and nettled in my bones, and I can say with overconfidence that these are favourites of mine. And this one definitely is. I listened to it on audio, I bought it, I read it physically. Both times it stood up. It is a good read. I really need to pick up the sequel because there is another book following Rachel and it will have that podcast element in it. I think it's called Dark Corners. I just don't know if Megan Golden will be able to replicate the feelings that I had for this book. I'm not sure. I guess we'll see. I also think with doing this, like, you know, if you have a favourite podcast and you listen to like one season and you really enjoy it, but the second season follows a different case that you're maybe not as interested in, or, you know, I think if Rachel Carl, the character that we follow in this, if she continues getting books and each one follows a new season of her podcast, there will be books that hit more than others depending on what kind of case she's covering for her podcast. But if you love a story within a story, a podcast element, mystery, a trial, and just like small town secrets, you'll like this one. And finally, the last book I have here is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Of course, I had to have the Queen of Thrillers on here. I originally read Gone Girl by this author and didn't really like it, but I have since read every other book she's written and bloody loved them. This is my favourite one because this has the twist. The bloody twist that I did not see coming. So in this, you follow Camille, and she is a journalist. She's tasked to go back to her hometown to figure out why young girls are dying in a very, very mutilated manner. So she also has to go back, live at her mum's like kind of mansion, and she starts slipping into the narrative of the victims and identifying with them while she's investigating this case. And she starts kind of reverting back to old habits, being around her family, being in this town, and you really start to see her trauma and what she's carrying with her as the story goes on. So you really get wrapped up in this character, you get wrapped up in her baggage and what she's carrying and her feelings, that when you start getting answers and the reveals start happening, you just feel like you're hot over the face because you're like, whoa, where did that come from? You know, but the reveal in this, again, not as poignant as Monday's Not Coming, but very similar in the way that it felt like a gut punch. It felt like a slap to the face. Like when I read those twists, I felt like I wasn't paying attention because they came at me so fast and so hard. And this is one of those that go in knowing next to nothing. go in with the bare basics of what I have told you and just keep going, because it is shocking at a moment if you don't know what you're looking for or if you don't know what to expect. So that is all I have for you today. I can't remember how many books that was, but I hope you enjoyed me talking about my favourite thrillers, and I hope you have added some to your list. If you've read any of these, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to know what your thoughts are. And yeah, I hope you have a great week, a great weekend, whenever the hell you're watching this. Remember to stay safe, happy, and healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Pick it up from the